one speaker short? Yeah. Okay. So I hand it over to the esteemed moderator for this session. It's over to you, sir.
Thank you. Is it working? Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible? Okay, great. I think last session actually covered a lot of things which I had to say. They did talk about water powers energy, energy moves water, and both together shape health and ecosystem. I think thanks to Casper and other people, Ravi Singh, who really brought this point. When I thought of Nexus and moderating this section, Nexus in my mind was always a negative connotation. It was nexus between politician and bureaucrat, nexus between police and others. So I was a little confused when I started thinking about nexus. And I think last session made me a little wiser. And I definitely think it has a lot of interconnectivity, which we talked about. And I'll not repeat that because I was also instructed that keep the session in time. Whatever 15 minutes have gone by, we have to still make it up. Well, we all know, and I don't want to get it we all know climate risks are changing in this new world. Urban systems are changing. Public health challenges are evolving. But unfortunately, our planning systems are not moving the speed the change is happening. We are still using old solutions to solve new problems. And that is where the challenge I think we all are facing. While we talked about water, energy, and health, another thought which came to my mind was, it was there in our old thinking. We always believed Brahma represented creation, Vishnu represented preservation, and Shiva represents transformation. And what we are doing right now, we are creating a resilient infrastructure and economics systems, which is role of Brahma. We are also preserving ecosystem and natural resources. And we are also doing transforming institutions and technologies which can serve us better. But all of this requires balancing between each other. So I'll go to my first panelist directly because we are going to talk about ecosystem. Then we move to Mr. Sikka, who will talk about agriculture, and then finally to the communities. So I'll start with Dr. Kumar, with you. Cooking is a good dish. Cooking a good dish is not just about ingredients. It's about balancing. And nature already performs that function. So how do you see ecosystems such as wetlands be integrated into mainstream water and urban planning to restore this natural balance? And what policy shift would help scale this approach in India? Over to you, Dr. Kumar.
Thank you, Dr. Vaidya. I think we recently, as a part of IPBES, Intergovernmental Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, concluded and published the Nexus assessment, wherein I was assigned the responsibility of coordinating the water chapter and how it connects to biodiversity, health, climate change, and other elements. And my learning was, water in whatever form is being discussed is so central to any conceptualization of future or present that it becomes so ubiquitous. And especially when we talk about ecosystems, ecosystems like wetlands are somehow hidden from the plain sight. Water is understood to be derived from infrastructure, but nature itself, when it starts functioning as, or has been functioning historically as infrastructure, that fact is commonly overlooked. Dr. Vaidya, I had a great opportunity of promoting integration of wetlands in urban planning in your tenure at NUA. And I think the messaging that I would give here is going to be no different. Wetlands, or for that matter any ecosystems, should not be treated as places in the landscape unless the interlinkages and interdependencies of ecosystems with various elements of urban scape or landscape are understood. Proactive policy making or programming is not possible. So if you just take the Yamuna floodplains as a place, yes, the place can be, you can have multiple visualization of what that place can be done. But the moment we understand that water security of Delhi is dependent on Yamuna floodplains, the visualization of Yamuna floodplains as the core infrastructure backbone of the city is something very different. And perhaps this is what needs to be done. The way water planning has been done in urban so that we get water from as far as possible, possibly in Delhi we are tapping Himachal Pradesh, or we take water as quickly as possible. We forget the natural ecosystems which have been central for any urban development. So reframing these relationships is so crucial to correctly and accurately embed the role of ecosystems in these processes. So that's where I'll end. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. And I think you very well said that the wetlands should be treated as environmental assets rather than just infrastructure. So I think that's very, very nicely, and I think water system definitely sits at the center of this nexus. So very nicely. I move to Dr. Sikka. Dr. Sikka, we often say climate change is an environmental issues, but in reality, it's also an energy issue. It's also a health issue, I think last time, and also ultimately a development issue. Now, agriculture sits right at the intersection of all three of them. As you have such a huge experience working in different sectors as well as talking about water issues, what policy innovations could simultaneously reduce groundwater stress, improve farm productivity, and reduce energy demand? And are there examples where such integrated approaches are already working in practice? Over to you, Dr. Sikka. So I think you will want to join there, so please.
Yes. We were given to respond to the 4 questions. So I religiously, like a good student, made a preparation to talk about all the 4 questions, because I take things very seriously whenever I speak. But nevertheless, I will not do that, because now that you have changed the question, that's very close to my heart, because I have been leading the global program on water, energy, food, environment nexus in India for the last 4 or 5 years. And I think International Water Management Institute, though I have taken the retirement last week, now I am only emeritus scientist with them. I was only country director, India, Bangladesh, and also a senior fellow. And since you raised this question, because prior to joining IWMI, I was Deputy Director General Natural Resource Management with Indian Council of Agricultural Research. Yes, so let me just say that when I looked at navigating this interdependencies on water, energy, health, environment, I thought of adding food to that, agriculture to that, because basically, as I think when in the previous session Caspar was talking about, it all started with water, energy, food nexus way back in 15 years back in Bonn conference, or even before that. And at IWMI we have been working for the last 15 years on that. And as you rightly mentioned, yes, as the time is progressing, and also then it is further compounded by the climate change, groundwater depletion comes also at the cost of energy. And as somebody was talking in the morning, I think the estimates are that about 19 to 20% of the energy goes into agriculture, and largely that goes into pumping. So one can understand the strong nexus, interconnectedness in agriculture, because in India about 64-65% irrigation comes from groundwater. So you can understand the nexus taking place in water, food and energy, which pretty live is there. And then the climate change is further making it more and more complex. Now, the way we are talking about, that's why I said that these are the three pillars: water, energy and food. Environment and the health, yes, they are far more important, but these are the key drivers, because once you do the misuse of any one of these things, it has a direct impact on the ecosystem, on the environment and also on the health. Because time is short, so I can't go on kind of analyzing all those things, because poor water quality is going to have. And now we are also working, I am also leading a program on One Health. Somebody was talking about the One Health. We have recently done the modeling in Song River Basin. I thought always, because I started my career in Dehradun, the Song River is more pristine perhaps, because it's still far up near Sahasradhara. But to my surprise and to our surprise, Song River was totally laden with also with AMR. We are working antimicrobial resistance. We are doing the integrated modeling. Now, so one can also see that with this thing, environment and the health are directly related. Of course, forget about when we are doing this overpumping of groundwater in the shallow aquifers in the eastern India and Bangladesh. Arsenic is another major issue, because I don't forget the grilling which was done to me by the JPC in the parliament on arsenic. So I still remember that I have faced that JPC on arsenic, and so that's all what you mentioned. Now, there were certain questions that they were raised, that what are these sectoral silos and how can we really dismantle them? We know that there are sectoral silos. I was part of the government for over 37 years, but still, of course, things are not that bad. Things are improving, I would not say, but still, of course, the silos are there because the way it works. Now, the question here is that how best we can really look into that, because unless we look into the cause and effect relationship, we really don't move on forward. Now, when we are looking into that, the most reflected ones, because you talked about the agriculture, peri-urban agriculture, urban-rural interface, those are the areas, plus climate adaptation and mitigation, particularly the agriculture systems or agri-food systems, water risk and disasters. These are the ones where you can see the siloed approach is really getting more and more detrimental. Now, if you say how to dismantle that, of course, the one word is better convergence and coordination. And I know it's easier said than done, because when I was part of the Planning Commission, the then Planning Commission, now Niti Aayog, we had brought out a guideline. I was co-chair of that convergence guideline, convergence of Manrega. And now when we try and look into this, that all this water, energy, food, environment, all these policies, how best we can try and bring them together so that they all talk in unison. At least what we do in water sector does not have a kind of negative impact on the energy and agriculture and vice versa. I will not go into the details, because the policies are that on one side we are talking about improved water management, but energy subsidies are there and free energy is there, so you can understand how the, and then MSP and all. I will not go into all those kind of tricky issues, because I leave it on the side. So what we need to really look into that is we need to have some kind of a coordination mechanism at the department or the ministry level across these sectors, who can kind of not a watchdog, but something like that they can oversee. The other thing was that embedded nexus thinking in infrastructure planning. Yes, when we are planning infrastructure, including as Mr. Ravi Singh was talking in the morning about that nature-based solutions, nature infrastructures. So those are the kind of things For that, if I had to put it in one line because of the shortage of time, I would say we need to shift the focus from reactive to proactive approach and follow a systems mode. Unless we talk of system, like somebody in the session before said, landscape, watershed, basin, yes, that is a kind of system, and then you see how best you can have an integrated systems approach. Of course, when we talk about some of these policies like circular economy or biocircular economy, and those are the kind of things that integrated wastewater management, those are the kind of things that really we need to look into. And we need to really shift the focus from conceptual thinking about Nexus to more practical tools and the frameworks or the decision support systems. So this is something, I can't talk more about that. I mean, those who are interested, as I said, because I was leading the program for Ganga Basin, the global program, we have developed what we call composite water, energy, food, environment index, wherein you can use this index because concept has been there, but it has not seen the field application because there is no way to measure that whether the nexus is positive or nexus is negative. How to do that? So there is no index to measure that. So that was our thinking to start with that, and it is under publication. So we have already done that composite WEF index, we call it, and so this is something that, so finally I will leave you because what could be the solutions that we need to really look into more data analytics based approaches through integrated modeling framework, and also trying to see to develop some support systems, and also like what we nowadays call digital twins, because digital twins is another good approach that wherein we can try to see that what is being modeled, and you can see it pictorially what is happening in the field. So that would be giving you what you are thinking and how it looks like in the real world situation. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Sikka. I think you brought up a lot of points which I think needs a full another workshop to discuss, because right now I'm working with 16th Finance Mission where we are talking about peri-urban issues and how do you mainstream them, and it's not easy. You did talk about monitoring, which is another big challenge. Digital, how do we, we all recently had that AI thing. How does the AI impact the urban issues and the space? I think that's...
The ultimate thing is how best you can improve the resource use efficiency.
Yeah. No, I think these are all very, very relevant. And lastly, which you talked about, convergence and coordination. I think that's the key of moving from idea to implementation. And that's where I'll move now to Dr. Sutirtha Sahariah, if I can spell it right. Yeah. What Dr. Sikka talked about, he did mention a lot of technical challenges, but it's also fundamentally a governance challenge. And your work in Bihar, particularly your research in Bihar, I think highlights how sectoral silos affect communities in practice, actually. So where do these silos really directly affect? How do they directly affect communities? If you can, based on your research on Bihar, if you can point out, and how do you integrate water and sanitation interventions and translate into better health, dignity, and education outcomes? So over to you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Vaidya. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm representing Sulabh International here, and Sulabh International, many of you might know that it's one of the largest WASH non-governmental organizations working in the sanitation and water sector since 1970. And Sulabh's intervention over the last 55 years under the leadership of its founder, Dr. Bindeshwar Pathak, was to kind of, transform bucket toilets, the toilets that were cleaned manually in hands way back in 70s and 80s into a two-pit solution. But that process, the interventions involved, door-to-door campaign, behavior change, and so on, which gave Sulabh the understanding of the, very ground realities, and through observation and ethnography. We always saw that the households or in places where you're building toilets are invariably poor, they have the biggest health issues. In those homes, daughters drop out of school. They do not have access to clean water. So these are interrelated nexus which you have always seen. So it is important for us to go beyond sanitation, you know. So Sulabh 1.0 from 1972 way up to 2023 was more about building infrastructure across the country, public toilets, household toilets, school toilets, and so on. But then there is always a nexus and areas that you don't see in between. So when you talk about silos, and one of the most visible example is menstrual hygiene management. Now, talking about periods, really, no one wanted to talk about it. The tattoos, it was not under any proper structural ministry or SDG goals. And that's where, you know, the non-governmental organizations come in, because MHM is so linked with water and women's health. And the Supreme Court recently has said it's a fundamental right for women and girls, and they should have separate toilets, you know, access to, you know, water all the time. But because Sulabh was working in this sector, we thought that we could do some other interventions, you know, especially in Bihar, where there are issues of malnutrition, food security, livelihood. So, so we thought that why not integrate this? And how do you integrate this? First, very recently, we did a situational analysis in 2 districts of Bihar as we speak, Darbhanga and Madhubani. And what we found there, number one, is that, well, all the speakers here mentioned about Jal Jeevan, and it's a very successful program, but we saw on the ground that though the coverage is there are other issues like energy and electricity failure. At the very time when people are supposed to receive water, they have erratic power supplies. Means the focus was on metrics, but not the underlying questions of nexus thinking. If there is water supply, what about the electricity? Do you have solar pumping there? How do you get access? Now the net result is that the communities on the ground, though they have the infrastructure, they have seasonal water scarcity, because during the time when water comes, the electricity is not there. So you see the nexus gap there. Then there are areas which technically is categorized under improved water conditions, but the water is contaminated with arsenic. So when the planning happened, there's no water testing. So there's a massive gap and people are suffering in these 2 places. Now, how we are trying to integrate that as an NGO? Now, you just mentioned about digital technology and AI. Now, as an organization, we are trying to build an infrastructure on the cloud. We have just signed up with a company in New York, Human Intelligence. They were there here. So when you talk about development, we are looking at ontology. Ontology is like when you see the cross-linkages between SDGs. Now, Sulabh, as an organization, our core SDG is SDG 6, which allows us to see through all the issues that I just mentioned about. For example, SDG 6.3, it's about clean water. SDG 6.4, about efficiency of water use. So how does this connect? Now, 6 is connected to SDG 3.3, which is waterborne diseases. So unless you have clean water, the waterborne diseases will be there. And 6.3.9, for example, it's about reducing threat to environmental pollutions like soil and climate. So these are very interlinked points. So we are now creating an ontology by using artificial intelligence. Now that ontology, how is it created? By collecting data from the ground, from the community who are working on the ground. We have the UN data, national data, sub-data. So through ontology, we are going to feed in that data into AI systems, and that will help us to connect the local population with AI. You know, you don't have to be always a technical person to understand AI, but that will give us a clear understanding and visibility of the requirements of the stakeholders, number one, and the research gap, and how do these metrics work. So by using this, by having a good data, we are hoping that we will be able to enhance the value of every single data. For example, if you are investing in water, how does it impact education of girls? Is there a correlation between the two? And how do you actually design an intervention so that you can meet more targets with one single intervention? So that's how we are looking at into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what all three of you said actually is the nexus is not an abstract idea. It is visible in ecosystem. It is visible in agriculture. It is visible in communities. I think the real challenge, which I particularly feel, is understanding these connections at the ground. And from my own experience, I always believe that we don't need more language. We don't need more platforms. We also don't need more frameworks or more processes, but we need more action on the ground, which you were talking about. And so coming to that, is becoming the, I particularly feel the era of frameworks is ending and era of execution is starting. So if era of execution and action is going to be the next era, my last question, and which is common to all of you, and I want, because of time, I want it a quick one. What one practical action, a policy reform, an investment model, or a technology deployment, or a partnership that could significantly strengthen the nexus between these three areas? So I'll start with Mr. Ritesh. Over to you first.
I think, sir, it's very simple what you said and what Mr. Dr. Sikka also said is joint planning. Don't go department by department. Bring all the data sets together. Look at the implications. And I think sitting in room already helps. So sitting in one room, that's what.
Thank you.
Yeah, one line is synergistic planning, because unless you have a synergistic planning across the sectors, things are not going to move forward. Because this is based on the experience when we started convergence in Government of India. We did it with one ministry and it really worked. So this is where you have to bring synergy and also adaptive planning. Nowadays we don't have to go for it has to be synergistic plus adaptive planning, because with the time, things keep changing, with the context, the things keep changing.
Well, I would say trust the agency and the knowledge of the community. You mentioned about adaptive planning, and that's very, very important. And I would say that use community as your data sets, and allow them to have a say in planning and executions. And going forward, it's just not the humans. I think the AI agents can also play a significant role. I think the data will become much more transparent and much more easier to work around. And that's how probably, there is a great scope for bringing in change.
Thank you. Thank you, the panelists. I think it's all what I wanted to say, you have already said it. So I'll just end with the three sentences, what I also feel that you already mentioned it, but let me just for 5 minutes close it. I think what you all are saying is a good dish is not about just ingredients. It's about how ingredients work together. You can have a best of recipe, you can have best of vegetables, you can also have a best of oil. But if they are not balanced, dish does not work. Same thing, I'll end with a small story. I was working on Master Plan Delhi 2041. What Delhi will be 2041 when in my last avatara. I used to go home and tell my son, तुम्हारा बाप दिल्ली बदल रहा है. 2041 में दिल्ली ऐसी होगी. And I used to see blank eyes, and he used to say, Papa, take a walk. The question was the youth, the young people, they don't, what we are talking about, synergy and all, they don't even understand this. We don't involve these communities, these groups who are going to see the future. So I particularly feel while we are talking about synergy, while we are talking about, I think we need to talk about the language which people start feeling about it. People start relating, yes, Delhi can be planned, or city can be planned, not Delhi, and Delhi is a difficult city, but cities can be planned, convergence can happen, coordination can happen, and we can see an impact on the ground rather than just seeing reports, moving around and showing that we are going to change. So having said that, thank you very much for joining in this panel discussion. I want to conclude, and I think I kept the promise which I made to Dr. Shweta Tyagi that I finished within the time what she has given to me. Over to you.
Thank you for that discussion, and thank you for moderating it very well. May I request Dr. Arvind Kumar to please join us on stage to kindly do us the mementos for this session as a token of our appreciation and thanks. I request Dr. Kumar to please join us on stage and present the mementos for this session. We start by thanking Dr. Ritesh Kumar. We thank Dr. Alok Sikka. We thank Mr. Anshul Jain. We thank Dr. Sutirtha Sahariah. And our sincere thanks to Dr. Hitesh Vaidya.